Welcome to Late Start Advantage, where I speak with professionals who pivoted later in their careers and went on to become successful founders and business owners, proving it's never too late to start something meaningful. I'm Jacques Valencia, and today I'm joined by Gabrielle Dolan, also known as Ral, co-host of the podcast Keeping It Real with Jac and Ral, creator of Jargon Free Friday and a global expert in business storytelling and communication, working with organizations like the Obama Foundation, Visa, Uber, and Amazon, just to name a few. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Thanks, Jac. I'm excited to be here with you.
Gabrielle, you've spent years teaching leaders how to communicate better. So why do you think there's many leaders, especially in senior roles, that still get it so wrong?
That's a good question. So even though I've been doing this for 20 years and trained probably tens of thousands of leaders, I haven't trained everyone. So maybe if I had the opportunity to train absolutely everyone, less would get it wrong. But the reality is communication is really hard. Like leadership is hard. I often think leadership is like parenting. You become a parent and you've got no idea what you're doing. And yes, you can read your books and you can look what other people are doing. And you might actually get really good at parenting a 2-year-old, and then all of a sudden they're a 4-year-old and you haven't parented a 4-year-old before, and then all of a sudden they're 16 and you've never parented a 16-year-old before, and then you have a second child and they turn 4 but they were very different to the other. So parenting's hard and you don't get it right all the time because of that. And it's exactly the same with communication. Communication is hard. You can be really, really good at communication and still get it wrong sometimes. And yeah, there's some people that clearly get it wrong a lot of the times. It's a really hard skill. I go into organizations and run workshops, and mostly the client will bring me in and say the leaders in the room, they're really, really good at what they do. They're technically really great at what they do. I mean, you sort of get promoted in your career because you're technically good at what you do. And then they step into leadership roles. And of course, one of the big, most important things you do as a leader is communication. And you might be really good technically, but doesn't mean you're good at communicating. So it's hard. I think the short answer, why do people get it wrong? Because it's bloody hard to do good communication.
Hi, just want to ask your support. Please subscribe and like this video. Thank you very much. You mentioned that most people get promoted because they're technically good at their job. Can you elaborate on what happens when someone with technical skills steps into a leadership role, but not have enough of that communication skill?
Yeah, well, the first thing they do is they struggle. That's what they really do. I've even had some organisations change the structure of promotion, because the reality is, if the only way you can get promoted, and this happens a lot in organisations, the only way you can sort of climb the ladder and get paid more money is by taking on leadership roles, so managing people. And there's some employees that are brilliant at what they do technically and will not be good at managing people, and nor do they want to manage people, or nor they should manage people. I think the way organisations are set up, it's set up that it's promoting, and the only way you can get ahead is to manage people. So some organisations are changing that and having a different career path for those that don't want to. But it's like communication is a skill. There's lots of elements to leadership that is a skill, and the really good organisations will see that. And as they promote people, and a lot of organisations do programs for first-time people leaders. So this is the first time I've managed people, and they'll do some basic leadership development. And then, of course, there's senior leader, executive leadership programs. And the really good organisations invest heavily in developing the people side of things, how to communicate, how to have tough conversations, how to present information clearly, all those things that comes with leadership.
I listened to one of your latest podcast episodes, and you're talking about storytelling, and you were talking about someone that was presenting to senior leadership, and then you suggested to her, these high-level senior people have heard so many presentations, but one thing that they haven't heard a lot of are personal stories. Can you tell me about encounter with your client?
The last 20 years of my career has been teaching people how to communicate more effectively through personal stories. Now, when I say personal stories, I'm not talking like oversharing or revealing deepest, darkest secrets about you. It's just sharing stories that didn't happen at work. The reason I focus on that is because they're the most powerful stories a leader can share, but they're the most underutilized. And the reason they're the most underutilized is because people sort of just don't even think they can, as in they don't think it's professional. So the particular incident you were talking about, that would happen on a very regular basis to me, where people would say, well, I've got to give a presentation. Well, I can't share a story because I've got to present to the board. And I can't share a story to a board, or I've got to present to the finance team and I can't share a story to the finance team. I'm giving people permission and really encouraging them to say, if your audience is human, and I always say that if your audience is human, they will respond to stories, and the story makes it really engaging. So there's all this science around storytelling, why it works, but people actually really engage in the story and it helps you get the message across better and they remember it. I ran a session, there was 100 people in the room and they were all from the CEO to the senior execs and a whole lot of other people in the room, and it got the same question again. It was like, if you got a 10-minute presentation, would you just start with a personal story? I'm going, absolutely. Just like the first words out of your mouth is start with the story. And what that does is it gets people really engaged. And of course, it's a story about what you're wanting to talk about. So it sets up your presentation you want to give. And it will be the most powerful opening or the powerful minute of your presentation.
I believe you said that don't start with, I have a story to tell, or here's a story. Actually, just start.
Yeah, start the story. So part of the framework that I teach is how you start your stories. And the most effective way to start your story is with time and place. So, for example, this morning I was at gym and I go into the story, and as soon as I start with time and place, like 10 years ago, we went on a holiday to Singapore, you will know that you're about to hear a story, and the human brain is hardwired to listen to stories. So straight away, we're listening to stories differently. And especially in work, when it can be a little bit dry, it can be a little bit boring, some of the stuff we're hearing. And then you go, actually, well, that reminds me when I went on an African safari in my 20s. It's like, hello, I'm now listening to you completely differently. So that's how you want to start your story. And the moment we start with, let me tell you a story, it's like people sort of go, oh, really? No. And it's sort of like they switch off because they have too many bad memories of, long-winded stories that didn't lead anywhere. So just start with time and place. And it's a really natural way to start a story. Jack, if you're talking to your friends and you're just sharing stories, you go, oh, yeah, what happened to me yesterday? And you go straight into it. You don't go, let me tell you a story about. You just start your story.
One thing I remember straight away is, there's a song that starts with, when I was a young boy, my father. You know that song?
Yeah.
So that's straight away like, oh, yeah, because straight away you're hooked in.
Yep.
And it does answer straight away the time and the place.
Yes. Yeah. What it is, it's the hook. You often see comedians, when they're telling a joke, they want it to make it sound like a real, authentic, natural story that happened. And so they will start a joke like, on the way to the airport today, and they're going into it. And then you think it's a real story. And then, of course, it's a joke. It may have happened, but normally it's just a joke and it didn't happen. But they're doing it through a story.
Yeah, that's what makes the best comedians really captivating to listen to.
Absolutely.
It's because of their stories. It's not just because they're saying joke after joke,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Gabrielle, you spent 17 years at NAB. That's a National Australia Bank for audiences not in Australia. Before starting your business, what finally pushed you to leave, and how old were you when this happened?
Yeah, so I had been working at NAB, as you said, for about 17 years. I started as a mainframe computer operator, a trainee computer operator. That's showing how old I was. They don't even have mainframes these days. But in my last couple of roles, in senior leadership roles and in change management roles, I started to notice that storytelling was a skill, that when I communicated through storytelling, it seemed to get the message across. I would look at brilliant presenters and they'd be sharing stories, and I'd look at really great leaders and you go, why are they such great leaders? And they were sharing stories. During my time at NAB, I'd been involved in a lot of designing and delivering leadership programs. So I worked in learning and development for a while. I had the skills and experience to design and deliver training programs for leaders. And There was a time I was thinking storytelling's a skill, but there was also a restructure at the bank, and one of the positions was global head of learning. And I had my eye on this role for probably about 5 years. So almost like 5 years previously, I said in 5 years' time, that's the job I want. So I went and did an MBA in management and leadership, and I did all this investment and told people, like, let it known the job I want. And so there was a restructure, and then this job was there. And so I applied for it, and I was so certain I'd get it. And I didn't get it. The manager who was recruiting, I actually knew her quite well, and I had worked with her before. And I still remember her saying to me, I've made a decision and I'm not going to offer you this job. And she told me why. There was someone who was probably a better candidate, so that's all good. And then she said to me, what do you think you're going to do? And I just remember saying, I think it's time to go. And she said, I think it's time for you to go too. And she said, you've been talking about running your own business and doing stuff on storytelling. Why don't you go do it? And so I literally sort of made that decision straight away. I remember coming out of the meeting and ringing my husband. He's going, yeah, what's happening? I go, I've just decided to leave. And he went, oh, okay, all right, well, if that's what you want. I did stay on. I was on a project at the time, so I did say, look, why don't I stay on to the end of the project, which was about like 3 or 4 months away. And I just thought that's going to give me time to prepare and get ready for it. I kept thinking one day I'm going to wake up and go, what the hell have I done? But that never happened. Our children were 2 and 5 at the time. So I just genuinely thought, I'm going to leave. I'm going to give this teaching storytelling. I really think I could teach leaders how to tell stories more effectively. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to just give this a go at being a business. And if it doesn't work out, I might give it a year or 2. If it doesn't work out, I'll just come back and get another job. And I would have been at home with the kids for a couple of years. So that was my thinking. It'd be fair to say it worked out. It did work out eventually. It's like, a lot of people say it was a big risk, and it didn't feel like a risk to me.
And how old were you when this all happened?
So I would have been probably about 38. Yeah, so it's 21 years ago. So 38. Just trying to do the maths, 38.
And how did that conversation go with your husband the moment? I'm pretty sure you spoke about it with him. How did he take it, and how did that go? Yeah.
It was really interesting, Jack. I seriously remember coming out of the meeting, and I was working in at Burke Street, on level 6, and he just coincidentally worked at another corporate that was across the road, and it's almost if we both got right close to our windows, we could see each other across the street. It'd be very rare that I would ring him during the day. It was like, unless something was wrong. So I rang, and I just literally just said, I've decided to leave NAB. And he went, oh, okay. And he went, well, if that's what you want to do, then good, all good, let's do it. So that was it. There was a redundancy package. So I'd been there for 17 years, and it was like my job had been retrenched. So there was a redundancy retrenchment package there. I can't remember what it was at the time, but it was a good package. And my husband was working full time, and he was on good money. He was on good money as well, and in fact more than him. So I guess collectively we made a decision to reduce our income by about 60%. But because I'd had that retrenchment package there, it was like, I think it was like about a year's salary or something. So financially we were in a good spot and in a safe spot. And I remember about 10 years later, he actually got really sick of corporate and he wanted to leave. I remember saying, we probably at that stage, and we might get into a bit about like how long did it take for my storytelling to become profitable. But after about 10 years, I said when he said that to me, I said, give me a year and I'll build this company. I'll build it that you're in a position to leave as well. And so he did.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that your story is unfortunately not a very unique story, because there's a lot of people out there that are currently experiencing a lot of this redundancy, restructuring redundancy, especially in corporate environments. And it's definitely a really, really hard period for a lot of people right now because of that.
Getting a redundancy can be hard. We actually used to call it corporate tax lotto. That's what we used to call it, because you sort of think if you're thinking, I could really go with a change, a redundancy comes along, you're just going, yep, hit the jackpot, happy days. I think it's an okay thing if people are confident they will get a new job, which is not always the case, and it's not necessarily the case right now where we are. But for me, it was just like happy days.
One of the things that I have heard from some of the people that I know that have been made redundant is, yes, they're getting the redundancy package, which is really good. It can be a year's worth of salary. So it gives them time to think about, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Do I want to finally start that business or that thing that I've always wanted to do? But also, a lot of these people have been doing this specific job for maybe 20 years.
Yeah.
And so for the last 20 years, they've been on this daily kind of ritual that the moment that gets cut, they're just so lost.
True.
More so than the financial part of it is, what is now the meaning of life? They're back to this, what is the meaning of life question?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the things that makes it really, really hard for people.
Yeah. Well, one of the challenges is a lot of people, their identity is too much wrapped up in their work. It's like their whole identity is their work. If you meet them and you go, hi, what do you do? They're going to go, well, I'm a project leader or a bank manager, and it's just the work and they might gradually mention the fact that they've got 3 kids and they love doing this sport. So too much of their identity is wrapped up in work, and therefore that can be a real challenge. And it's also a real challenge going from working 40, probably 50, 60 hours a week, and most people do, and then waking up and doing nothing. So the real thing is then, how do you find other interests? If the redundancy just comes as a surprise and it just comes out of nowhere, that can be a struggle. If you're planning for it and if you can see it coming, then you can start to prepare for this. And the reality is now, you should always be planning for what's next. I think you should always be, even if you really love the job you're in, and I loved my job at NAB and I loved my entire 17 years at NAB. Even if you love your job and your career right where you are now, you should also be having an eye on the future. Loyalty is not a thing. Companies can say all they like about loyalty, but if the market changes, if something happens and they've got to get rid of 20% of their staff, they will get rid of 20% of their staff. It's still a business. I speak to a lot of people and say, have a side hustle. Do like what you're doing, Jack. I was like, this is what I'm interested in. Have a side hustle. And I think the really good employers will allow people to have side hustles. So, yeah, it can be tough, but I think it's tough when you're not prepared for it.
So what motivated you to always be prepared, even in a job where you loved for 17 years? Because as you mentioned, not a lot of people really think about that, but it is a good idea to still be prepared for it. Mm-hmm. What motivated you to always be prepared to do that? Yeah,
look, it's probably, you know what, I'm probably giving myself too much credit because maybe I wasn't as prepared. It's like, but I that's the advice I'd certainly give people now. But the fact that I had even voiced to people that one day I want to start I think I would want to run my own company before, so my kids were 2 and 5. So I had been on maternity leave. I'd had 2 lots of maternity leave. And it was on that first lot of maternity leave that I actually, and you know what? I'm not even sure why I did this, but I got an ABN. I started a company. I called it Gabrielle Dolan Consulting. I got an ABN, got it set up. And I think it was because a colleague of mine wanted some coaching. And I thought so that was my little side hustle 25 years ago, to do some one-on-one coaching. So I had sort of set my business up as part of that. And on my maternity leaves, I would just do a tiny, tiny little bit of coaching. And then I just thought I could keep this going. It's almost like I can do more coaching and less working in corporate, because when I came back from maternity leave, I came back part-time. So I never came back full-time. So I would work, I think, 3 days a week. And then I had 2 days a week. Yes, you're looking after the kids, but I still was entertaining this, well, what else could I do? And so when I did leave, first of all, I had about 3 or 4 months buffer because I said I would stay on to the end of the project. So that gave me some time to get really ready. And in that time, I just started doing all the things that you need to do when you're starting a business. But I did have I was going to say fortunate enough situation where I could, once I'd made the decision to leave and take the package, because I was on a project and the project was winding down, I suggested, why don't I stay on the project? And as people, part of managing that project was trying to find people other jobs when they got off the project. It was like, well, as they roll off the project, I will take up any slack and just literally be the last person standing on the project. And that was a win-win for them as well. So they went, yep, that'll be great. And so it was great for them and it was great for me. I speak about the importance of your network at the moment, like the people in your network, are they really helping you? When I left National Australia Bank, my entire professional network, well, let's say 95% of my professional network was people that worked at NAB. That was it. That was just like anything. How am I going to grow a business and sell stuff where 95% of the people I know only work at this one company? So that was something that I had not prepared for. If I give advice to people now, I'd be saying broaden your network for your future. Think of what you want to achieve a year or 2 out and make sure your network is going to support that. And so I wasn't prepared in that way for sure.
So I have 2 questions regarding everything that you were saying. So one is, how did you balance being a mother of 2 young children with starting your business?
That was actually really easy because this was 21 years ago and I was selling storytelling as a concept in business. No one was interested in storytelling as a concept 21 years ago. Like no one was interested. Like people would go, what has storytelling got to do with anything? So I remember that I left NAB in February of 2005. And I think the very first client we got was, I think, November that year. So there was, I would be meeting people and I'd be doing stuff and I'd be writing stuff on LinkedIn, but I wasn't running training workshops 3 times a week, that's for sure. So that was the first year. If you looked at it a year, the amount of workshops I had to deliver, as in, go and deliver workshops, it would have been like less than 10 a year. And, in the first few years, it was only about 5. So balancing that with the kids was actually easy because I wasn't busy with work. And so that was relatively easy. I did, mind you, I had great support. My parents were heavily involved. They would come and look after the kids. It was especially when they started going to school. My parents would come and pick up the kids from school one day a week and then stay for dinner. And then my husband's parents would come and pick the kids up one day a week and stay for dinner. Before they went to school, I was pretty big on putting them in childcare to just socialise and stuff. So they would go into childcare probably twice a week, and then which meant I could probably drop them off at 10 and pick them up at 3 or whatever. But between childcare, parents looking after them, it was actually pretty easy to balance it.
Yeah, that's very nice to have that support group.
And you look at some people, like they have kids and, their parents might be in another country or in another state or, even just 2 hours out of the city, not even alive, and they don't have any family support. That can make things really difficult.
So you mentioned this before, and I'm going to ask it now.
Okay.
How long did it take your storytelling company before it became profitable?
Yeah. So I started storytelling with another woman. So there was 2 of us that sort of started this company. And we had a bit of a 5-year plan. I think naively we thought we would do this for 5 years and then we'd sell it for millions of dollars anyway. Well, that didn't happen. We didn't, in regards to profitable, It was actually profitable really early because we didn't have a lot of expenses. So because we sort of work from home and, there'd be some expenses, but not a lot. But what we mean is, well, what's profitable? The company was making a $20,000 profit split between the two of us. So that is not a lot of money. And so this went on for years, like I'm saying 6, 7, 8 years. After about 8 years, the money that I was earning, so after we split the profits and what I was earning, was nowhere near what I was earning at the bank, like nowhere near it at all. And not, again, not that it's about the money, and I had a lot more flexible life, so I wasn't expecting to be earning as much as I would in corporate. But then there was part of me saying, if I had stayed in corporate, not that I wished I had, but if I had, I would have been earning so much more. And after about 8 years, me and my business partner, because we had a bit of a 5-year plan, and so we decided to sort of go our separate ways. I sort of wanted to do some things and she wanted to do other things, and it was just the right time for us to sort of go our separate ways. So then I was operating by myself. Then that was also at a very similar time that my husband said to me he's sick of corporate and he would like to leave. And at this point, I'm going, we can't afford for you to leave yet. So I think it was a combination of him really wanting to leave. And I go, okay, I think I need to just take this really seriously. I don't know what it was, whether it was a mindset shift. I think it was a combination of me going out on my own. I think when you're on your own, you can go a little bit faster because I don't know what it was, but over that next 12 months, I went from, I quadrupled the profits. So it went, probably 5 times. It was actually 5 times I went in a 12-month period. So I went from, earning about 100,000 to doing about 100,000 in sales to about 700,000 in sales. At one point I said to my husband, you know what, if you want to leave, leave. We're good. I think we're good now.
That must have been an amazing time in your life when that happened. Imagine going to your husband like, hey, I have good news.
Yeah, it was, because I sort of remember saying, give me 12 months. And I think it was after about 9 months and things had got really bad with his work. And we just made the decision. It was like, he could have held out and waited for a redundancy as well, but it wasn't guaranteed. And he was just getting quite stressed and depressed about it. And I said, you know what, let's just go. Let's pull the pin. So, that happened after about 9 months. But, that was an amazing ride to go where just sales just kept coming in and I was doing it by myself. And so, it was a good 12 months.
Is it okay if you share with us what you changed that quadrupled your sales?
I'm thinking here, I actually don't know. So, because a lot of people have asked me what changed. I think it was the fact that it was me and just me. The company was no longer a company with someone else. It was just me and I was selling me. I didn't second guess myself. I just went for it. I've always thought that I'm always being authentic and being totally me, but I think that just ramped up a bit. Like it was just like being totally me, following things that I knew could work and just going for it. The fact that, again, I'd made this promise to my husband, give me 12 months, it was probably being more diligent on the hustle. So literally the hustle of sales. And maybe in the past it was like, oh, yeah, that client never got back to me. They're probably not interested. I'd be going back to the client going, hey, what's he still interested in this? And I love the hustle. I actually love the hustle of sales. And I think because I know I can always add value, which I think makes the hustle fun. I'm not trying to sell them stuff that's not going to add any value to them. I think it was being totally free to just do what I wanted to do, and maybe that impending timeline gave me a bit of a hustle.
You mentioned something about your network being 95% from the banking sector. Mm-hmm. How did you grow your network?
Yeah, so that was like when I left, so 21 years ago. What happened? So a few things happened. I did start to actively grow my network, going to events, using LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn as a place to grow your network. But what happened? Yes, we connected via LinkedIn. What happened is over time, of course, all these people at NAB left. and they would get jobs somewhere else. And so they would bring me in to the new company. And then over time, all these people got more senior and senior. And I would say I'm very good at keeping in contact with people. I still keep in contact with people that I went to school with like 40, 50 years ago. That comes quite naturally to me, to just keep in contact with people. So yeah, over time now, I've got all these people that used to work at NAB 20 years ago, 25 years ago, have left. They've all become really senior. I could look at corporate Australia and look at all the very senior chief people officers or chief communication officers or even CEOs or CEOs and go, yeah, well, they're my mate. They're my mate. And it was like, I've got a lot of clients that have become friends, but it's been strategic about it. Some of the sessions I run is how you be strategic with your network. So, I mean, I always say part of, if I like someone and get along with a client, I'm going to sort of keep in contact with them. Part of me is going, well, that makes good business sense because it could potentially be more work. But if there was a client I didn't like, I'm not keeping in contact with them, even though it would make good business sense to keep in contact with them. If I think they're a dickhead, then I'm going, well, no, I'm not spending time with you. But yeah, I just sort of nurture my network. To be really strategic with your network, you do have to build it, but you've got to nurture it. What that means is don't contact them only when you want something from them. It's sort of saying, hey, we haven't caught up for 6 months. What are you doing? Let's catch up. I had lunch this week with a client who I just thought, for whatever reason, we haven't sort of seen each other for about 6 months. And I said, let's catch up. And we went out for lunch and I pay for lunch and, all good.
Yeah, it's very interesting because one of my friends decided to start a business. And that's also what he told me in terms of how he keeps up with his network. He does just call them and say, hey, you want to hang out? You want to catch up for lunch?
Yeah.
And they don't even talk about business at all.
No.
Zero conversation about business. But what happens is that because he's culminating all of these relationships, a lot of the time, a vast majority of the time, at the end of that, it always almost becomes a business conversation afterwards. But he doesn't intend to. He really just wants to.
And if business comes up, all good. And I should also say too, nurturing your network isn't just about going out for lunch and paying for lunch. It's simple as a text message. Hey, how you going? Or you might have read an article that you go, oh, I remember you were really interested in this. I thought you might find this interesting. And it's just finding ways to make a connection. And I think there's nothing wrong about being strategic about that. And I think if it's done in an authentic way, you can still be strategic and genuine about it. I remember once, this is going back years ago, and it was actually probably 10 years ago, and it was with NAB. I think they just announced a restructure or something. And of course, a whole lot of people that still work there. And so I just sent someone a text saying, hey, I heard about the bloody job cuts at NAB. Hope that doesn't affect you and your team, Hope you're well, Ral. And they just got back on, thank you so much for thinking of me. No, we're okay. And then I thought, actually, I know about 10 other people at NAB. So just genuinely being interested in them.
And also you've mentioned NAB again.
Mm-hmm.
And was it in NAB where you started to grow your interest, your knowledge, your experience regarding storytelling in relationship to the business side of it?
Yes, absolutely. So it was in my last couple of roles at NAB, or probably my last role at NAB, in change management roles. So I'd moved into project management. As I said, I was working on projects and I was in change management roles. And I noticed that when you shared a story to communicate the change, but look, it wasn't this silver magical bullet, but people seem to get the message across better. And then I remember thinking there's something in this concept of storytelling as a skill. And the woman I started the business with, we had done uni together, and she was thinking about the same thing. So do you reckon there's something in storytelling? I go, yeah, I reckon there is. I reckon this is a leadership skill. I just, like I said before, I started to notice, you look at really great speakers and it was like, wow, they're they're sharing stories. That's what they're doing. It was while my last probably year at NAB, I started to appreciate storytelling as a leadership skill.
And where did you learn this leadership skill?
Yeah, okay. So then after I left NAB, and you go, all right, well, we want to teach people how to tell stories. Like, it was like, how do you tell stories better? So it was a case of, there was a gentleman by the name of Stephen Denning. He was actually born in Australia, but he lived and worked in the US. And he had written a book called The Leader's Guide to Organizational Storytelling. And he used to be a senior exec at the World Bank. And so he wrote this book, and it made all sense to me. He was like reading this book and go, yeah, this makes sense. And the fact that I remember thinking, you know what, if a senior exec at the World Bank has written a book on storytelling, surely there's something in there. So there's some legitimacy about it. So, I read his book and you sort of got some ideas. And then there was another, Annette Simmons, who's another American. She'd written a book on the story factor. So I read that book. You got some ideas. There was another American woman called Laurie Silverman who wrote a book on Wake Me Up When the Data's Over. And so it's just reading all these books, taking stuff, knowing how could you teach people this? And then, when you really start to develop your framework and your methodology is when you start teaching it. Isn't there a saying, the way to get really good at something is teach it? And so, I'd run training workshops and you'd sort of go, that doesn't work. This did it. I sort of thought this made sense, but no one really gets it. So I'll change it. I'll change the way I deliver this. Well, I'm still evolving how I teach it. Over the time, I developed a framework that now I know is bloody foolproof when I run workshops. The biggest feedback I get is I love the fact that you've taken something quite complex and put it into a really simple framework that's easy to follow and easy to do. So that's come with a lot of reiterating and evolving the way I teach it, I guess. And also as I evolve and things evolve. My latest book is How to Use AI in Storytelling. Wasn't thinking of that 2 years ago.
Hello. Thank you very much for watching so far. Please subscribe to this channel. That's the best way to support me at the moment. And please like this video if you're enjoying the conversations thus far. Now let's continue the episode. Okay, I have a bunch of follow-up questions.
Of course you do, Jack.
Gold, yes. So I'll start with how has storytelling in business evolved all these years, especially from when you first read the first storytelling business book up until now?
Yeah, how it's evolved is people are now realising how critical it is. When I first started 21 years ago, it took about 8 months to get my first client. And actually, I should say my first client was National Australia Bank because it was my old boss and I'm sure he just, maybe he felt sorry for me or whatever. But it took years and years and years for business to go from what the hell storytelling got to do with business? We're about data and facts and we don't need storytelling. We don't need once upon a time. To now, people are literally saying this is a key leadership skill. Storytelling is a critical communication skill. It's a critical influencing skill. It's a key leadership skill. The Wall Street Journal wrote an article at the end of last year and said the biggest growing job title on LinkedIn had storyteller in it. Now it's that's the biggest growing job title, which part of me goes, I knew it. I told you so. Part of me says that. Part of me is a little bit concerned because I think every employer every leader is a storyteller. It's a real danger if organizations think they can outsource storytelling to the storytelling department or the chief storytelling officer, because the reality is all your leaders are storytelling and they need to be trained on how to do that well. So it's evolved from 15 years ago, a client would want to bring me in and they would say, can we change instead of calling it a storytelling workshop, can we call it a communication workshop or an influencing workshop? Because if we call it a storytelling workshop, no one will come to it. And I'd go, yeah, you call it whatever you like. They're going to learn how to tell storytelling. It's changed from that to storytelling. And, just getting calls. I was on a call with a event organizer who's running this big global communication summit event in Italy, and the title is Leadership and Storytelling in an AI World, and they want me to speak at it. It was like, so that's how it's evolved. It's evolved from what? Storytelling to yes, we need storytelling.
And you mentioned that you have a book, and the title of the book is How to Use AI through Storytelling.
Yeah, well, the title of the book is it's still a storytelling book, but the subtitle is The Craft of Authentic Storytelling Made Smarter with AI. Have a look. So this is my 8th book. The previous book I wrote was about 5 years ago, and I truly, truly thought that's the last book I'm going to write on storytelling. I think I'm always going to write books, but there's only so much you can write on the one subject. But it was probably about 18 months ago. I'd be running a workshop, and then increasingly I would have people ask me, so will AI replace storytelling? I was quite horrified at these questions. I was like, no, like, why would you even think that? And then people would say, can you use AI to help with your stories? And my initial response was, no, that's cheating. That's not authentic. And then I sort of thought, well, if you think you're the expert on storytelling, you probably should be open about this and do your own research, which I did. And to my surprise, not pleasant surprise, probably to my disturbing surprise, AI stories were actually pretty good. They were okay. They were missing something, and what they were missing was authenticity and real human connection, but they were okay. So that was then the premise of the book was, in a world of AI-generated content, our stories are needed now more than ever, and I truly believe that. The AI-generated content is starting to sound all the same, and that it's our own authentic stories that will sort of get cut through and make the real connection. But AI is not the enemy, and how you can use AI to help you find stories and then refine them without losing your voice. The book is ultimately a story intelligence book. There's a whole chapter on how to find stories without AI, and there's another chapter on how to find stories with AI. In the book too, I put stories to the test. So my stories up against AI-generated stories, and I got people to rate them. And so all that research is in the book. But if someone had said to me 2 years ago, you'll write a book around storytelling and AI, I would have been going, oh, wow, I don't think so. But anyway, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it takes a great deal of insight and courage as well to be able to accept that, study that extensively like you did, do a lot of experiments, put it through the paces, but not only that, actually write a book about it.
Yeah, I know. So,
people don't do that.
No, they don't. So I remember it was about November 2024 that I just thought, maybe I do need to write something about it. So I remember I called my publisher through Wiley and I discussed the concept with her, and she went, well, it would certainly be topical, it would be certainly relevant. And she was the one that said to me, if anyone's going to lead the conversation around storytelling and AI, it should be you, because you're pretty much one of the global experts. And I went, oh, okay. And I said, oh, I just don't know if it's a book at the moment. And I said, give me to the end of January. And because I really don't do much work between mid-December and end of January. And I said, give me to the end of January and let me see what I've come up with. Anyway, by the end of January, I'd written about 30,000 words, which is a fair chunk. I said, yeah, I think there's a book in this, definitely. And we discussed about some other elements of the book. And then the next thing is when you work with a publisher, they give you a deadline. She did say, would you have it ready by the end of February? And I went, absolutely not. We then went, I think it was May. So I had 4 or 5 months to get it finished. And then once you've hit that deadline, then you go through the editing process with them all. And it hit bookstores in November, December last year. And can I just add a little humble brag? It debuted at number 1 in Australia's business books. So I was pretty happy about that.
Congratulations. So where can people find this if they want to read the book?
In Australia, it's in bookstores like Dymocks and at airports. But yeah, it's available from any good bookstore. Probably some really bad bookstores as well. No, but just online, just Amazon or online.
I think it's one of the next books that I'm going to need to read.
Yeah. Talking about Amazon, when it got first released, it's considered a new release for 3 months in Amazon. They have hot new releases in all these different categories, and it actually reached number 1 in 4 different categories. So it reached number 1 on Amazon's, and this is globally, hot new releases in workplace communication, and number 1 in, I think it was job hunting and career advice, and number 1 in team meetings and presentations. So so part of me, I mean, I'm pretty stoked that that's happened, but it's also an indication that it's relevant and timely, and people are finding it of value. And getting lots of people sending me emails, or I see just random LinkedIn posts of people writing, talking about the book. So yeah, I think it is both timely and relevant.
Yeah, and what your publisher mentioned is very smart as well, because, it's always the first mover advantage.
Yeah.
So
true.
I think there's a lot of insight there, being a first mover advantage.
The opportunity I have to speak at this global conference has come about from the book, because the theme of the book, the summit, is authentic leadership and storytelling in a world of AI, which is almost the subtitle of my book. I often say to people think do you make money writing a book? I was like, no, not really. I mean, maybe if you're Brené Brown or Adam Grant, you might make money selling millions and millions and millions of copies. But what a book does do, it provides opportunities, because the book sort of shows the world that you're the expert in this. I mean, not necessarily, but that's what you're hoping it does, and it can lead to opportunities. And I've spoken around the world and done amazing gigs like the Obama Foundation you talked about in your intro, like getting that email. And it's all because you're writing books and people are hearing about the work you do.
I want to talk more about that. So how did that all happen? What did you feel when you first got the email? How did you know it was legit in the first place? And what happened next?
Okay, so when you this was 2019, and so you get an email from someone at the Obama Foundation saying that they want to talk to you about running training for the Obama Foundation. And I don't know about you, but the first thing I thought was, this is a scam. This is like someone's trying to, I don't know. I didn't believe it. Part of me, I wanted to believe it, but I was like, no, this is too good to be true. And if anything,
it's a very reasonable response.
Yeah, I just cautiously wrote back going, yes, I'd be interested in hearing more about it, like playing it pretty cool. Anyway, they said, great, let's set up a meeting. And so I had a meeting with this person, and she was just saying, we run this program in the region, in the Asia Pacific region. So, and we're running it in Malaysia, and it's for like 200 emerging leaders. And we try to get experts from the region as well. And we wanted something on storytelling. And she goes, and every Google search led to you. And she said, I saw your website and I thought, oh my God, I've got to meet this person. And so by this stage, I'd realised it was legit. And then she told me that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama were going to be at the conference, and it's the first time that they've actually been at a conference together, and it was in Malaysia. I had a rule at the time that I don't travel when it's either of the girls' birthday, like I don't want to be away on their birthday, and it was going to be Alex's, my eldest daughter's, her 19th birthday. She was actually studying a master's in politics and international trade, so she's very much into politics. And so I asked the organisers, could I bring her with me, and could she be like my assistant in inverted brackets? And I told her the reason why, because it was her birthday. And so they actually agreed, and they said to me, don't tell anyone that, she's your daughter, because everyone else has asked to bring someone and we've said no, and we've only allowed you. Everyone knew she was my daughter because she's the spitting image of me, and her name tag says Alex Dolan, but that doesn't matter. And so there was 2 really cool moments that happened. So I ran 5 workshops over the week, and I started this workshop and it was full. There was no more seats left. So Alex was literally just sitting right at the back on the floor, down on the floor. And this woman came in a bit late, and she went and sat down on the floor next to Alex. And Alex just so happened to say, oh, I'm going out to get a cup of tea. Would you like a cup of tea? And she went, oh my God, I've just flown in from the airport. I would love a coffee. And so Alex got her a coffee, and she said she came back and gave her the coffee, and the woman hugged her and said, "Oh, thank you." I knew who it was. Alex had no idea who it was. And in the break, I said to Alex, can you just come and give me some water? And I go, "Do you know who that woman is that you're sitting next to and just hugged you?" And she went, "No." I go, "It's Barack Obama's sister." And she went, "Oh my God." And so I was like, so she's sitting on the floor down the back next to with Barack Obama's sister. So that was one very, very cool thing, right? Alex is so excited. Barack Obama spoke on the final day. Everyone said that he's just got to jump on a plane, and he was flying to Singapore. And we were told constantly, you will not get to meet Barack Obama, and whatever. Okay. So I'm sitting there, and I was talking to one of the participants, and then they got called in for an official photo. So the whole tour of 100 of them had to go into this room to line up for the official photo. And she went, "Oh my God, can you wait for me? Because I really want to keep this conversation." I go, "Yeah, sure. So me and Alex are sitting there, and a few other speakers. And then Barack Obama walks past with his security guards to go into the room to get a photo taken with them. And like, he's literally only like 20 feet away. And it's like, everyone's like, "What? Oh my God, he's still here." One of the other speakers says, "When he comes out, let's draw him to us with our energy." If someone had said that to me normally, I'd go, "Yeah, whatever." And I was like, "Yep, let's do that." I don't know what it was, but he came out and he could see us, and, we all had our speakers lanyards on, and he broke rank and he went, "Oh, the speakers." And he came over and he shook our hand and he thanked us for the work we are doing and blah, 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 and probably spent about 5 minutes talking to us. We had been told several times, you're not allowed to ask for a photo with them. He must know that rule, and he said, "Let's get a photo with the speakers." Alex was next to me, and I pushed her like next to him so that he's there, and he's got his arm around us, and he's quite tall, as you know. And Alex is next to him, almost underneath his armpit, and then I'm next to him as well, and then a few of the other speakers. And he walks away, and Alex goes, "Mum, this has been the best day of my life." So it was pretty cool.
The amount of mum points you would have,
Yeah. The amount of mum credits. So unbeknownst to us, a few months later, there'd be no travel anywhere. But then after COVID, I had to go to New York for a conference. So I took my younger daughter, Jess, with me. And Alex goes at one point, "How come Jess gets New York and I get Malaysia?" And I go, "You got Barack Obama." And she went, "Oh, yeah, fair point."
So every time she asks for something,
yeah, it's like, "You got Barack Obama."
And there's a bit of imbalance.
Yeah.
Well,
you got to meet Barack Obama.
That's amazing. Were you super nervous? Did you actually get to talk to him?
Yeah. He shook our hands. He sort of asked us what I did. In fact, I've got the photo framed up on my office, and I'm looking now. There's 4 speakers and me. And I'm looking at the photo of me and all the 4 speakers. We've just got the biggest grins on our face. Like, we're just like, "Oh my God, this is going." And Alex is just looking super cool. Alex is like, "Oh, yeah, whatever." Like, she looks the best. I'm looking at that photo, and she just looks stunning. And like, yeah, I'm next to Barack Obama. And the rest of us look like we're kids in a candy shop. But yeah, it was, and you know what? It's really, like, I wouldn't say like I'm a massive fan of Barack Obama. I mean, I admire him and respect him for what he's done. I remember thinking, you can't fake that authenticity. Like, he seemed really authentic. But I also remember that when he left, I reckon it took about half an hour for my heart rate to come down. So I was actually really surprised it was like, oh my God, it was like the adrenaline or whatever it was. But I remember thinking, starstruck. I remember thinking, I can't believe my heart rate is like so high. So yeah, I remember that.
And I'm pretty sure there's been a lot of people that have met you that have also felt that with you, They're like, "Oh no, Gabrielle Dolan," and then they're also starstruck. How does that feel to be on the other side of that?
You know what? I was speaking to a colleague of mine who's similar as in she's written a whole heap of books and is well known, especially in the business world. I have people come up going, "Oh my God, I love your work. I'm such a fangirl." I had someone the other day, this woman go, "I love you and love everything you say." I was like, and they want to get photos. And I remember thinking, oh, that's a bit weird. And I would play it down. I'd go, oh, don't be silly, blah, blah, blah. And my colleague said to me, you have to almost own that this is a really big moment for them. And if you don't own it and don't respect it, it's almost diminishing the experience for them. And so when you put it that way, it's not me going, oh, look at me, how famous I am. People want a photo with me. But it's acknowledging that they do and that this is a big moment for them, and just treating it with the respect that you should in those situations. I guess it's a bit owning it, but owning it for them, if that makes sense. Not sort of going, you should be in awe of me type thing, but owning it for them.
Yep. And also it gives it the genuineness of the moment that, yes, you're not wrong for being, how do I say it so it doesn't sound wrong? Like you're not wrong for feeling the way that you feel. Mm-hmm. You're not denying them of how they feel.
Yeah, that's what it is about too. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually have a confession to make. So I was going through your podcast and I was about to read your books. But then I was like, if I become too much of a fan of you, I might freeze during the interview. So I actually tried to do my best to I've listened to 5 episodes and I'm like, I can't listen to more because otherwise I might freeze.
Yeah, you don't want to become across as a stalker.
Exactly. Just in regards to when you were doing the Obama Foundation event, you mentioned that you were doing the workshops. Did you structure your workshops the same than how you structured your workshops normally, or did you have to cater them to the event?
Yeah, I did have to cater them because the workshops I go into business. And look, most of the time I don't need to structure the workshops differently because it's, especially in a corporate audience, it's sort of similar. They've all got the same challenges. But in this situation, these were young emerging leaders. So I think it was 25 to 40. And a lot of them were running their own not-for-profits or social enterprises. And it was really just how they can share their story about why they started and what their purpose is in a more effective way. So they were only 90 minutes. So the conference went for a week and I ran 5 90-minute workshops instead of having the whole 200, the plenary that break into smaller workshops. So I absolutely had to tailor it. And that's the case when the audience is completely different. So for example, in a few months' time, I'm doing some work with the Paralympic athletes, and I will be completely tailoring my content for them because it's prepping them for when they're doing radio interviews or TV interviews, how they can share little stories to communicate more effectively. I'll probably just take them through a process about saying, what do you get excited about? Even funny, like what's the funniest thing that's happened to you being a Paralympic? What's a real challenge for you in the sport you do or just living life? So they can have little micro stories. So that is completely different to what I do in corporate.
So I want to go back to the storytelling with leaders. Mm-hmm. When you first started helping leaders with storytelling, what mistakes did you see that they kept doing repeatedly?
There's a few. I'm not going to go in any particular order. They go too long. Your story should be about a minute or 90 seconds, and they're just talking for 5 or 10 minutes. And it was like people are bored and they're disengaged. So I see that a lot. And the more senior people are, because you know what, because no one's telling them, get to the point. So going too long is a very just tactically, it's a common problem. One of, I guess, especially early on is only sharing work stories. So pushing this concept of sharing a non-work related story to connect with your work message. That was a bit of a hard sell at the start because I think back then storytelling was so new that they would go, okay, I'm prepared to tell a story, but it's got to be a work related story. And I'm going, well, yes, you can tell work related stories, but your most powerful ones are going to be your non-work related stories connected to your work message. So just getting people across that line took a while, not so much anymore. I think now people see the value in that. And then the other mistake I see is they're trying to find a story, but they're not clear on what the message is. So they'll go, I just can't think of a story. And I go, well, what's your message? And they're literally talking 10 minutes later. And then I'll go, so what's your message? And they can't clearly articulate what the message is, or they've got like 10 messages and they want one story to cover off 10 messages. It's like, no, just one message per story. But you've got to be really clear on the message, because you could come up with a story, but if it's not the right message, then it's not going to be effective. So they're probably some of the big ones I see.
In saying that, what's a good 1-minute structure that would avoid that over talking when they'll be telling their story?
Yeah, so look, the structure I teach people is the beginning, and we spoke about this before, like just time and place. It's one sentence. This morning at gym, I saw a guy do this, right? One sentence. In the middle, if you're introducing people, name them. I've talked about my daughter Alex, my daughter Jess, and from then I say Alex and Jess. I don't go my daughter, my daughter, my daughter. So naming people in your stories. You've got to constantly decide what's in and what's out. And that comes back to what I just spoke about before, that one single message. So once you're clear that this is the single most important message, every bit of detail you put in your story, you got to go, well, is this relevant to the message or it's not? And you've got to constantly decide, do I put it in or do I put it out? And if you don't have that discipline around the one single message and only information related to that's going in, that's when your stories go too long. So that takes a real discipline. And then the really important critical bit is ending the story in a way that people get the message, but without telling them. You don't want to go, so the moral of the story is you should be kind to strangers, whatever it is. What you might say is the lesson I learned from that was the importance of being kind to strangers. And you just leave it like that. So you don't want to be telling people the moral of the story is. And that's a very brief version of probably 45 minutes of my workshop, but brief little outline.
So another spin on this is, what do leaders think they're doing well in communication, but are actually getting wrong?
It's interesting. I was with a client yesterday. There was a whole heap of comms people in the room, and they were loving everything I said, because I think I was reinforcing all the messages they had said they've been trying to communicate to the leaders. And one of them was, they think they're telling a story. So they think they're communicating right, but they're not telling the story. And so this came up several times in the workshop. It was, one guy said, well, we use a lot of hypotheticals, but so that's story. So I go, no. A hypothetical is a hypothetical. It's not a story. They're really good for scenario planning. So we make the mistake of going, we should use hypotheticals for scenario planning. So what if this happened, we scenario plan it. But you don't want to communicate that way. Like you could maybe, but you communicate it. And then the other thing I find people do that they think it's a really effective way of communicating is use an analogy or a metaphor. And they just sound so cliche. So again, yesterday they were saying, oh, thank God you said that, because we've got some leaders that want to communicate this whole strategy or whatever through an analogy. And I went and I said, and I go, I bet you it's a sporting analogy. And they just started laughing. They go, yes. They changed from a rowing analogy to a Formula F1 car. I go, it's always a sporting analogy. And they just don't work. They're just so cliche. They're like cliche and boring. And so I think people, they think they're communicating really well because of that, but they're not.
Yeah, that's interesting, because probably one of the best people that can talk and add storytelling in his conversations is Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you're right. It feels like he's using analogies and metaphors, but he's actually usually using them as a reference.
Yep.
So people can relate to some of the more complex things that he's talking about.
Yes. But, and in that situation, analogies and metaphors can work. It's like something's really complex and you just go, it's a little bit like bling, bling. And people go, right, I get it. So yes. They work. It's sort of when organisations decide that the whole strategy is going to be communicated through this analogy or a metaphor. And, it's always, you just got to know when to stop an analogy. You can take an analogy way too far. So, yeah, that's the mistake I see.
So So if someone watching wanted to become a better communicator immediately, what's the one thing they could change today?
You know what? It probably comes down to being more empathetic. This is going to sound a bit cliche as well, but be a better listener. Because I often, leaders will, like, especially when they're rolling out change, for example, I need to communicate this change, and they're focusing on why the change and how good the change is going to be. And I often stop and go, yeah, look, you absolutely do that. And I go, but what do you think? Why do you think that employees are resisting this change? Like, why do you think they're not getting it? And I go, have you thought about that? And, you know, when I spend more time with them, they'll go, well, yeah, they're probably really change fatigue. They are change fatigue. There's been so much change. They're just really tired of more change. And I go, well, maybe you should address that before, like have a story about that. Or I've had some people go, they actually think there's nothing wrong with the old system. So we're trying to implement a new system, and they think there's absolutely nothing wrong with the old system and it's working just fine. So why are we doing this? And I go, okay, so you need a story around that. So can you see if your audience is sitting there going, I don't even know why we're doing this. There's nothing wrong with the old system. And you're just going in going, how great the system is. They're not even listening because you haven't addressed their concerns or the message of sometimes we think there's nothing wrong with the old system now, but it's not going to be good for us in the future or whatever. But address that. So it's getting, I think it's being a better listener and being more empathetic would make you a better communicator.
And do you think it's similar to these massive companies like Visa and Uber, or is it different?
No, it's absolutely the same. It doesn't matter how big the company is. It could be a company of 5 or a company of 50,000. It is always people speaking to people. So it's got no difference at all.
Okay. I want to move on.
Okay.
What made you start Jargon Free Fridays?
Oh, yeah. So part of what I do is about communicating more authentically and being real. And so storytelling is one way to do that. But I also think we in business have this obsession with jargon and acronyms. Like there's an excessive use of acronyms. Like at the moment something has 3 words in it, we just reduce it to an acronym, which can actually, it impacts the way we communicate. So it stops us from being really effective communicators. And it can disconnect and isolate people. I mean, I don't know if whenever you start a new job and people are using these acronyms, you don't even know half the things they're saying because you don't know what the acronym means. So there's a real danger in using acronyms. And I could use an acronym and I know what the acronym means, but you've got a different interpretation of that acronym. So there's a real danger in it. So I always knew this was the case. And then I had a client, I was sitting in my office on Friday morning and I had a client send me one of those Dilbert cartoons and it was around jargon and acronyms. And she sent it to me and I think she said just something like, Happy Friday, I thought you'd enjoy this. Maybe we could stop using jargons today or something like that. And I thought, oh, maybe what about if, because it's hard to give up jargon and acronyms, but what if we did a fun way to say, let's just try to give it up for one day? And because it was the Friday, I go, what if we just had a Jargon Free Friday and just on one day we try to give it up? And anyway, this idea went into my head. I was thinking, oh my God, this is so exciting. I just decided to do it. I remember speaking to my mentor and I said, it's probably going to cost me $20,000 to do what I want to do to get this website built, to get actors in to do all these videos about like what if marriage proposals were in jargon and stuff like that. It's going to cost me money to do this. And it's not like I'm selling a product off the back of it. I don't run jargon and acronym training workshops. I mean, I do incorporate it into it. And, you know, he just sort of said, well, he said it is part of your message around real communication. If you want to spend money on it, spend money on it. So yeah, I did that. And the idea is, in a fun way, raise awareness to the consequences of the excessive use of jargon and acronyms. But I did have a lot of fun working with the actors and the writers in building those videos.
So in saying that, can you share what the worst piece of corporate jargon you've ever heard?
God, there's so many. I can tell you one that's I will share a couple. So first of all, over COVID, I got so sick of the word pivot. I was actually going to correct you, Jack. You said it in your intro about people that pivot. It's like, But
Yes.
it was just always overused. It was like, oh my God, everything's pivot. We need to pivot our thinking. We need to pivot. It was just the most overused word. So that was an annoying thing. But I do remember a time, and this is actually when I still worked at National Australia Bank. I worked with this leader, and I was sort of in that role. I was sort of like an internal consultant. So I still worked at NAB, but you'd go in and work with teams around process improvement when one of those things were being rolled out. And this leader, he would always use the term executional excellence. And I remember saying to him, I go, Jeff, what do you actually mean by that? Because I go, I'm not really sure what you mean by it. And I'm not sure if other people know what you mean by it. And he sort of said, well, it means, and then he started to use more jargon. It means bloody strategic, blah, blah, blah. Like he just said more jargon words. And I went, still not sure what it means. And I think I asked him several times, and he started to get a little bit frustrated with me. And he said, well, what it means, put simply, it means if we decide we're going to do something, let's make sure we do it bloody well right. And I go, why don't you just say that? Because could you imagine if a leader says that to you, okay, we can do this, but once we've decided to do it, let's make sure we do it right. That's sort of almost inspirational as opposed to executional excellence. And it was just like, I often joked about it. Just sounds like you killed someone and you just did it really well. Just
Execution, that's true. An assassin, that's the last,
There was a
his final finishing move, executional
you
excellence.
You were very excellent at executions. And I think, just to tell you another story, and I think this is where it all started, because this was when I was a computer operator. So this was, I don't know, late 80s, say, for example, early 90s. And I was working as a mainframe computer operator on the big IBM machines. And one of the machines, the fan had broken. So as the operator, it was your responsibility to ring IBM and get a fan replacement. And so you'd pull out, and this was just paper, you'd pull out the big binder with all the parts, all the different parts of all these different IBM computers. And I'm looking down, fan, I couldn't find it. I just could not find the part for fan. And so I had to ring them and said, I can't find the part number under F for fan. And they go, oh, no, it's under E. It's under A. And I go, what? And they go, oh, it's called an air movement device. It was just like, I was like, oh, my God, you are kidding me. So they've taken a word fan and called it an air movement device and reduced it to AMD as the acronym. And I think
it's even worse.
Yeah.
Because now it's a processor.
Yeah, exactly. That was in my mid-20s, and I remember thinking how ridiculous acronyms were. I think ever since then it's been a little bugbear of mine that it's not all acronyms, of course, but it's just the unnecessary use of acronyms, which annoys me.
Yeah, imagine going from fan to that.
AMD.
Okay, I'd love to speak to you more, but I know that you have a very limited amount of time. So I want to start the end of the interview.
Start the end, okay.
Yes. So is there anything I didn't ask that you wish I had asked?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot of topics there, Jack.
If you were starting again today, what would you do differently?
I'm a big believer in I wouldn't actually do anything differently, because you'd never know, like you just never know that one little thing, if you change that, it might have had a domino effect somewhere else. So, yeah, like even people say to me, oh, do you wish you had started earlier? It was like, I learned so much at NAB, and especially in my last few years at NAB. So I don't want to sound cliche, but I don't think I would have changed anything. Oh, you know what? I'm going to take that back. We thought, to be a big business, you needed like a logo and everything and a website, which we did, but we got all this stationery printed, like paper printed with our logo on it, and envelopes, and 2,000 of them. I think I was just using them as scrap paper for the next 10 years. So I would not bother spending money on getting envelopes printed.
Because you never know, especially when you just started.
You just started, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, don't put too much pressure that what you started with is what you need to end with.
Yeah. And when people leave now, like want to go out on their own, I go, you can get a lot done with just a LinkedIn profile. I mean, you don't even need business cards anymore.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think sometimes you get excited on all that like fun stuff of, printed envelopes. Not that printed envelopes are fun, but it made you feel like a grown-up business.
What's one important lesson that took you years to learn?
It took me a while to figure out energy management and where I operated at my best. So, for example, I know I'm my most creative in the morning. So now I don't schedule meetings before 11 o'clock, for example, because I just want my mornings to be free to write or go to the gym or do stuff like that, but knowing where I operated the best. And maybe that's just something that comes with age, because when you're younger, you're probably just going a million miles an hour. But now I'm very conscious of that. So, but it took a while. And I don't know whether that's just normal, it comes with age. I'm glad I've discovered it.
For someone watching who might be earlier in their journey of being a founder, what advice would you give them?
Being a founder or running your own business or whatever it is, you're going to have lots of demands on you the whole time. And I would say be very proactive in figuring out where you, like, what do you want this to look like in 5 or 10 years, and almost start how you want to finish, and be very productive that you don't burn out and manage your time. I know one of the best decisions I made was, and this was when the kids were still quite young and in school, that I made a decision not to work school holidays. So I was not going to work school holidays. And I reckon I stuck to that 95% of the time. There would have been occasional times. But it's been, once you go, no, this is what I want my life to be like, and then having the strength to say no to work. And, people would go, what, so you would just lose work? And I was like, I'd very rarely lose work. I would just be doing it later. So I just wouldn't be doing it then. I think part of that is like I was sort of more in demand. It was like, well, no, I'm not available then. And sticking with that, my girls are now 22 and 25 and I still don't work school holidays. It's just like they're not even at school. I had a client this year ring me to see if I could do some training on the 15th of January. And it was like, no, that's ridiculous. I'm not working on the 15th of January. So, and just said no. And so the reality is I didn't do it, and, I'll probably do it later in the year.
And do you think starting later in life actually gave you an advantage?
And maybe it depends on what you've done previously, like, working. So first of all, I am selling storytelling workshops predominantly into corporate and senior leaders and executives. Without me working in corporate for those 20 years and actually being a senior leader myself and being involved in these changes, so I've sort of experienced what they've experienced firsthand. So that's definitely helped me. Like, that's definitely given me credibility around it. So, yeah, I think absolutely it has. It's sort of like I had 20 years in corporate and now I'm 20 years doing this, and excited about what the next 20 years will bring.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle, for sharing your insights, your career from NAB, being a business speaking coach, an author, and also a podcast host. We didn't even touch on a lot with your podcast, this
came up a couple of 3 years ago so we talked, clients. So a client that has become my friend. This is Jac, the Keeping It Real with Jac and Ral. She was a client of mine, 18 years ago, I probably met her, and then she was a client, and then we sort of became friends. And then when she left the corporate world, I helped her go into her own coaching business. So I, provided a bit of advice around there, and we were having dinner one night and she said, I think we should do a podcast. And I was like, okay. And, so part of where I'm at the moment is I just want to do fun stuff, and doing the podcast is fun. We decided, okay, it's going to be career advice. We're going to do a podcast. It's going to drop every Monday. We want to keep it really short, like 25, 30 minutes, just so people like the little bite-sized things. It forced me to do some research on it. So it keeps me thinking, keeps me learning, and really like doing it. And we sort of do 3-day immersions where we take people away and there's only 8 people. And so like building really strong connections. But yeah, love doing the podcast. Love the podcast. Even my mum listens to it and likes it and doesn't tell me off too much for swearing. We were never allowed to swear growing up. Oh my God, if we said crap, we'd get in trouble. It'd be fair to say I do say a bit more than crap on the podcast, but I asked Mum, I go, Mum, what do you think of the swearing? She goes, oh, well, clearly you're too old for me to tell you off about it, so that's all right. We don't swear all the time, but, a little bit of swearing.
And where can people find your podcast?
Yeah, so the podcast is on the usual Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Keeping It Real with Jac and Ral.
And where can people find you if, they want to connect with you or they want to avail of your services? Yeah,
look, I've got a website, gabrielledolan.com, but I'm really active on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's my strongest platform I'm on. So, if you want to follow and connect, just reach out there or you'll find me. I'm around.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle. I'll put everything in the description down below. Mm-hmm. And hopefully everyone has had a great experience listening to this episode with Gabrielle Dolan. And thank you very much and have a great day, everyone.